A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, the hum of the Millennium Falcon's engines provided a soothing backdrop. Luke Skywalker stood by one of the windows, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. They seemed to twinkle softly, as if trying to communicate with him. He sighed deeply. There was so much on his mind. Skywalker, Han Solo's voice broke into his reverie. You planning to stare out there all day? Luke turned and saw Han leaning against the doorframe. Just lost in thought, he replied. Leia walked in, holding a datapad. I think we all are. She added, this mission to Dagobah is important, but it's also risky. Han walked over to the cockpit and sat down in the pilot's chair. Well, let's get this over with then. He began pressing a series of buttons, and the Millennium Falcon jumped to light speed. The stars outside the window stretched into long beams of light as they entered hyperspace. Several hours later, they arrived in the Daga system. The Falcon glided gently over the dense swamp, its reflection shimmering on the water below. Eventually, they landed, and the three of them stepped out into the humid air. The surroundings felt eerie, yet there was an underlying sense of peace. It was a land of contradictions. Luke, Leia, and Han started their trek through the swampy terrain. The moist earth squelched under their boots with every step. This place feels alive, Leia observed, her eyes scanning the murky water and towering trees around them. Han chuckled. Oh, it's alive all right. Just be careful. It doesn't take a bite out of you. They continued walking until they reached an ancient temple. Vines crawled up its stone walls, and an aura of mysticism seemed to hang in the air. This is it, Luke said, almost whispering. The force was strong here. He could feel it flowing through him like a gentle stream. They entered the temple cautiously. The walls were adorned with enigmatic runes and the remains of what seemed like Jedi artifacts. I've read about this place, Leia began, but I never thought I'd see it. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick, and a mysterious fog rolled in. Just then, Luke felt a presence, one he hadn't felt in years. I think we're not alone. Out of the fog emerged a figure cloaked in darkness. Welcome, Skywalker. The voice was deep, yet oddly familiar. Before they could react, the figure removed its cloak, revealing none other than Anakin Skywalker, Luke's father. Father, how is this possible? Luke stammered, grappling with a wave of emotions. Anakin approached them slowly. The Force works in mysterious ways, my son. I am here to guide you. The room seemed to brighten, and a sense of calm washed over them. But time is of the essence, Anakin added. To guide us where? Han asked, slightly skeptical but intrigued. Anakin looked at his son and daughter, his eyes softening. To bring balance, once again, to the Force. There is a power within this temple that could either save or doom us all. As Anakin spoke, the walls of the temple seemed to resonate, as if echoing his words. The group continued deeper into the maze-like structure, led by the ethereal guide that was once Anakin Skywalker. Leia felt a twinge of apprehension. And how can we trust this power won't fall into the wrong hands? The galaxy has known enough darkness. Anakin paused. That's where you come in. Leia, your strength and Luke's will be the deciding factors. The room they entered was vast, its ceiling lost to darkness. At the center stood a pedestal, holding an object that shimmered even in the dim light. It was a crystal, its facets reflecting colors they had never seen before. Ah, the Kyber Crystal of Unity, Anakin announced. It has the ability to amplify the light or the dark, depending on who wields it. Luke felt a pull towards the crystal, It was as if the Force itself was nudging him forward. Taking a deep breath, he approached the pedestal. The air grew denser, almost as if the temple was holding its breath. With trembling hands, Luke reached out and touched the crystal. A surge of energy flowed through him, warm and invigorating. A series of visions flashed before his eyes, some pleasant, others troubling, yet all interconnected by the Force. He stepped back, his eyes meeting Leia's. "We need to protect this together." Just as they nodded in agreement, a rumble echoed through the temple. The walls started to shake, and the crystal glowed brighter. "What's happening?" Han shouted, gripping his blaster tightly. "To guide us where?" Han asked, slightly skeptical but intrigued. Anakin looked at his son and daughter, his eyes softening, to bring balance, once again, to the Force. "There's a power within this temple that could either save or doom us all." As Anakin spoke, the walls of the temple seemed to resonate, as if echoing his words. The group continued deeper into the maze-like structure, led by the ethereal guide that was once Anakin Skywalker. Leia felt a twinge of apprehension. And how can we trust this power won't fall into the wrong hands? The galaxy has known enough darkness. Anakin paused. "That's where you come in, Leia. Your strength and Luke's will be the deciding factors." The room they entered was vast, its ceiling lost to darkness. At the center stood a pedestal, holding an object that shimmered even in the dim light. It was a crystal, its facets reflecting colors they had never seen before. "Ah, the Kyber Crystal of Unity," Anakin announced. "It has the ability to amplify the light or the dark, depending on who wields it." Luke felt a pull towards the crystal. It was as if the Force itself was nudging him forward. Taking a deep breath, he approached the pedestal. The air grew denser, almost as if the temple was holding its breath. With trembling hands, Luke reached out and touched the crystal. A surge of energy flowed through him, warm and invigorating. A series of visions flashed before his eyes, some pleasant, others troubling, yet all interconnected by the Force. He stepped back, his eyes meeting Leia's. "We need to protect this together." Just as they nodded in agreement, a rumble echoed through the temple. The walls started to shake, and the crystal glowed brighter. "What's happening?" Han shouted, gripping his blaster tightly. Anakin's ghostly form flickered. "It seems the temple senses our intentions. We have awakened something, but whether it's for good or ill remains to be seen." Leia braced herself. "What do we do now?" "We must finish what we started," Luke said, his eyes filled with resolve. "We'll secure the crystal and take it somewhere safe, somewhere it can't be used for evil." Anakin looked at them with pride. "Very well, but know this, the Force is now awake within this temple. You must all be on your guard." With a sense of urgency, Luke carefully lifted the Kyber crystal from its pedestal and placed it in a protective case. As he did so, the room began to change. Symbols on the walls started glowing, as if activated by the crystal's removal. The group made their way back through the twisting passages, each step accompanied by the thrum of the Force. It was as if the temple itself was watching them, gauging their worthiness. Han was the first to notice it. "Hey, do you guys hear that?" "Sounds like footsteps." They all stopped, listening intently. Sure enough, a series of footsteps echoed through the corridors, growing louder and closer. "Someone else is here," Leia whispered. Suddenly, a group of hooded figures emerged from the shadows, lightsabers ignited. "Ah, trespassers! And you've taken something that doesn't belong to you," the leader hissed. The tension in the room was palpable, like the quiet before a storm. With swift movements, Luke and Leia ignited their own lightsabers, the blades humming in the charged air. Han readied his blaster. Anakin's spirit materialized beside them. Remember, you're not alone. The Force is with you. A battle ensued, lightsabers clashing in a dance of light and darkness. Despite their numbers, the hooded figures were no match for the Skywalkers' mastery of the Force. One by one, they fell until only their leader remained. He removed his hood, revealing a face twisted by dark energies. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over, he snarled, before disappearing in a swirl of dark mist. The temple seemed to sigh, its walls ceasing their vibrations. Anakin looked at Luke, Leia, and Han. You've done well. Kyber crystal is safe, and the Force is in balance, if only for a moment. As they left the temple, each felt a sense of peace, but also a weight of responsibility. There would be other challenges, other battles. But for now, the galaxy was a little safer, and the bonds of family a little stronger. Returning to the Millennium Falcon, Luke carefully stowed the case containing the Kyber crystal in a secure compartment. We'll need to decide where to keep this safe for the long term, he said, looking at Leia and Han. Leia nodded, her eyes meeting Luke's. I agree. It's too dangerous to keep it anywhere obvious. We need somewhere that even the dark side of the Force can't penetrate. Han settled into the pilot's seat, firing up the Falcon's engines. Well, I know a few places off the grid. No one would think to look there. As they left the planet's atmosphere, Leia felt a sudden shiver down her spine. Something's not right, she whispered, her eyes narrowing as she looked out the viewport. That's because we have a stowaway, Anakin's voice echoed in the cabin. The dark energy hasn't left us. It's hiding in the shadows. The Falcon's lights flickered ominously. Han looked alarmed. Is that going to be a problem for the hyperdrive? No, Luke responded, eyes closed as he reached out with the Force. But it could be a problem for us. Just then, a dark figure materialized in the middle of the cabin. It was the leader of the hooded figures from the temple, and he looked livid. You can't escape me, he snarled. Han immediately pulled out his blaster and shot, but the bolt was deflected with a wave of the intruder's hand. Really, you should know better. In a blur of motion, Luke and Leia ignited their lightsabers, the blades casting their colorful glow against the dark. This ends now, Luke declared. Anakin's spirit appeared once more. Let the Force flow through you. Trust in it, and you will prevail. A fierce duel erupted within the cramped space of the Millennium Falcon. Yet, despite the confined area, Luke and Leia moved in perfect sync, parrying and attacking as if guided by a single mind. After what seemed like an eternity, Luke saw an opening. With a swift motion, he disarmed their assailant. Leia quickly used the Force to hold him in place. It's over, she said, her voice tinged with finality. Defeated, the dark figure hissed. You may have thwarted me today, but there will be others. The darkness is never truly vanquished. We'll be ready, Luke replied. He then used the Force to push the figure into a deep sleep. We should drop him off somewhere. He can't cause any harm. Somewhere far, far away. Han piloted the Falcon into hyperspace, its engines roaring as they made the jump. Another close call, Leia sighed, relaxing for the first time since they had left the temple. But we did it, together. Anakin's spirit gave them one final approving look before fading away. The Force will be with you, always. And as the stars turned into streaks of light outside the viewport, the Falcon and its crew disappeared into the galaxy, ever vigilant, ever ready for whatever came next. The Millennium Falcon emerged from hyperspace in a remote star system, far removed from any known trade routes. "This should do it," Han said, setting the coordinates for a barren moon orbiting a gas giant. "Nobody comes here," he continued, steering the Falcon towards the moon's surface. "A perfect spot to drop off our wanted guest." As the ship touched down, Leia activated the containment field around the unconscious dark figure. "We can't take any chances," she murmured. "His powers are unlike anything we've seen before." Luke nodded, his lightsaber in hand. "I sense his dark energy even now. We'll need to remain vigilant until he's safely off the ship." With extreme caution, they transported the figure onto the moon's surface. Han placed a small beacon next to him. "This will send out a weak distress signal. Somebody will find him, and not soon. By then, we'll be long gone." As they returned to the Falcon, Anakin's voice resonated in the cockpit. "You've done well, but remember, the battle against the dark side is never ending. The Force is a constant struggle between light and darkness, and you must always be prepared." They were about to re-enter the ship when Leia suddenly froze, her eyes widening. "Wait," she whispered. "Do you feel that?" Luke closed his eyes, reaching out with the Force. "Yes," he said, his voice tinged with unease. "There's another presence here, but it's different. Not dark, but complicated." Just then, a cloaked figure emerged from behind a rock formation. Removing the hood, the face of Obi-Wan Kenobi became visible. "It's been a long time," he said, a slight smile crossing his ethereal face. "But your Leia started," Obi-Wan interrupted. "A projection through the Force? Yes. I have a message that cannot wait." Luke's eyes widened. "A message? From who?" "From a future not set in stone, but one that might come to pass," Obi-Wan intoned. "You must seek out the lost Jedi texts. They contain wisdom that could tip the balance in our favor. But where do we find these texts?" Han asked, looking skeptical. Obi-Wan smiled, his image beginning to fade. "Ah, that is a journey you must undertake. But you won't be alone. The Force will guide you." As his projection disappeared, the crew stood in silence, contemplating the gravity of their new quest. "We have our mission," Luke finally said, breaking the silence as they re-entered the Falcon. Han fired up the engines, and they lifted off, leaving the barren moon and its dark occupant far behind. Leaping back into hyperspace, the streaks of starlight blending into a tunnel of glowing energy, the trio knew that the Force would be with them, always. As they journeyed through the galaxy, each lost in their own thoughts, the ship hummed a comforting tune, lulling them into a sense of peace. And for a few fleeting moments, they each felt a touch of hope, that the balance could, one day, be restored. The Millennium Falcon cruised at sublight speed, its engines purring softly as they moved through the tranquil emptiness of space. The interior lights were dimmed, casting gentle shadows on the walls, allowing for a moment of reflection. Leia looked out at the galaxy, the far-off stars twinkling like a sea of dreams, yet to be realized. She leaned back into her chair, feeling the fatigue of their journey, but also a sense of relief. "We've done well today," she whispered, almost to herself. Luke, sitting nearby, felt a warmth in the Force, as if it was acknowledging their small but meaningful victory. "Yes," he replied softly, "but it's just one step in a longer journey." Han looked over from the pilot's seat. "Well, every journey's gotta start somewhere," he said, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards in a small but genuine smile. "Why not here?" A gentle hum filled the air, emanating from the core of the ship, almost as if the Falcon itself was agreeing. It was a lullaby, sung by mechanical parts and guided by human hands, a symphony of hope in a galaxy that so desperately needed it. Luke stood up and walked towards the viewport, his eyes meeting Leia's. "Rest now," he said softly. "The Force will watch over us." Leia nodded, and they each retreated to their quarters. Han set the ship to autopilot, trusting in the Falcon's instincts as much as his own. As he left the cockpit, he paused for a moment, looking back at the controls, at the chessboard, at the seats that had carried them through so many adventures. "Good night, old girl," he whispered, patting the wall affectionately before making his way to his bunk. The ship sailed on through the night, its passengers wrapped in the embrace of peaceful slumber. And as they drifted deeper into sleep, the lines between dreams and reality began to blur. In that quiet, they found sanctuary, a brief respite from the battles behind and the challenges ahead. They floated in a realm where time seemed to slow, where past and future melded into a comforting present. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, wheeling across the sky in patterns written long before the dawn of man. And for a few moments, amid that vast cosmic ballet, all was still. As sleep enveloped them completely, there was a collective sigh, a releasing of burdens, a yielding to rest. It was as if the galaxy itself had paused to wish them sweet dreams. And so, in that deep, serene silence, they found peace